may be harsh, but it is the truth nonetheless, because he says to the disciples and to us, your comfort, my comfort, comes secondary to the work and to the mission of saving people's lives. It's not about us. It's not about the disciples. He says to them, it's about the mission that I've called you to go on. It's about the job, the calling that I've asked you to do. And the calling is to save people's lives. And so if you don't understand what it means to recharge, then you're going to be tired, you're going to miss out, because you're going to say, Jesus, physically I'm exhausted, I need to get away. And Jesus says, no, understand, your life depends upon this mission. Give them something to eat. And this is interesting, okay? Because look, the Bible accounts that there were 5,000 men. Okay, now Jewish customs and things like that, they didn't count women and children. It just, wasn't the cultural thing to do. And so when they count 5,000 men, a lot of historians and theologians, they say there must have been at least, anywhere from 15, 20 to 25,000 people that were there when Jesus was doing this miracle. Okay, so why, he says, you give them something to eat, and then the disciples come up to Jesus and they say, Jesus, there is no way we're going to feed them. It would take 8 months worth of salary to feed these people. And even then, people would get maybe one piece of bread, and that's it. It's not worth it. Do you really want us to go out and spend that much money to feed these people? And then Jesus says, no, go and see what you have. And they find out that he has 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, and then he gives thanks to God, and he does this amazing miracle before the people. Now here's the question, okay? Why does Jesus even bother to feed them physically at all? Because the crowd that's there, they're not starving. They're not going to die if they don't eat that meal, right? But Jesus, he takes a break from his teaching, and he bothers to feed them. And the question that I have is, Jesus, why do you even do that? Why bother? It's not like they're going to die if they don't eat one meal. You can continue to teach, and people will eventually go if they're hungry. Why feed them? And I think this is where the most important part of the story comes, because Jesus is trying to remind us as we go out into this mission the 2 most important things for us to understand. And the first is this. The first is that Jesus demonstrates his power in our lives and in the mission that he's called us to do. And he reminds us, I use you and me where we are, just as we are. Okay? Jesus says the most important thing, first part of understanding my mission, is that I use people where they are and just as they are. He doesn't wait for us to become somebody we're not yet, and then he says, oh, you're not ready yet, and so I'll use you when you're ready. He says, I'm going to use you where you are, when you are, just as you are, and I'm going to show you my power because I'm going to work through you just as you are. Because why? He asks in verse 38, he says, go and see how much you have. Go and see, go check. What is it do you already have with you? And can you imagine there's 25,000? Picture this, okay? This sanctuary fits 200. Significantly a lot more people than you can fit in this entire sanctuary. And Jesus says, look, go, what do you have? How much food do you have right now with you? The disciples, if I was one of the disciples, I'd come over to Jesus and be like, now for sure Jesus is going to send them home. Because what? This is barely enough to feed me. Okay, I need like 6 fish and 10 pieces of bread. This isn't going to feed anybody. He takes it to the disciples. The disciples bring it to Jesus, and Jesus looks at it, and here's what's amazing that Mark doesn't account, and it's missing from the story, but I'm just picturing Jesus, and the disciples are expecting Jesus to be surprised. Like, that's it? That's all we have? Oh, okay, then we need to send them away. Jesus doesn't even flinch. He doesn't even say, that's it. He doesn't say, that's all. He just takes it, he gives thanks to God, and he says, start passing it out. Can you imagine what the disciple must have felt? Remember I've been telling you that they're teenagers, right? That they're young people? They're like, Jesus, you must have been out in the sun for a little bit too long, because this math isn't working very well, man. And can you imagine, to 25,000 people, okay, and Jesus tells them, hey, to the disciples, I want you to make little groups and have them sit down because we're going to eat. And for some reason, the disciples, okay, and the different people, they sit not in just small groups, Okay, you notice in the scriptures, it's not like groups of 10, 20. They're groups of 50s and hundreds. They're large groups, okay? So they're going to run out of food even before they get done with the first group. And Jesus is like, don't worry about this. I'm going to use you just as you are with what you have already in your possession. He gives thanks to God where everybody can see, all the people can see, and he says, here, I'm going to break off a piece of bread for you, break off a little piece of bread for you, a little piece of fish for you. Now I want you to start handing it out. If I have this piece of bread and fish in my hands and I start handing it out, I'm like, this is so ridiculous because I'm going to run out after the first person. Can you just imagine what this feels like for a disciple? They go up, they have this piece of bread, okay? And they break off to one person and they give it to him and they're like, here's your piece of bread. And then they look down and all of a sudden the bread's like, shh. You're like, wait a minute. Maybe I didn't see that right. Goes to the next person, breaks off another piece of bread and gives it to them. I mean, we read these stories and we don't really think about what it's like. I mean, five pieces of bread, 2 fish. Okay? There was more bread than fish. Now imagine if I had fish, I probably have a tiny little fish, you know, a sliver little sushi fish or whatever it is, and I give a tiny little piece to somebody and all of a sudden it's like, you're like, what? The disciples are thinking, oh my, what's going on? And they just give it to one person and they're like, oh, it's done. And so they give it to the next person and they're like, okay, I'm going to run out soon. And they start giving and giving and giving and giving and giving. After 100, after 200, after 300, 4, 5, 20,000 people. And what? Jesus says he's not even just done there, okay? Jesus isn't just making a point. He is actually boasting about something. He's making an exclamation point because why? It says in our scriptures that he had 12 baskets full of food left after they had given everybody some food to eat. If I was a disciple, I'd be freaking out. This bread won't disappear. Can you imagine how amazing that feeling must have been like? And you see, that's what Jesus is inviting each and every single one of us. He says, don't wait till you have your first $1 million or your first $1 billion or until you have this, you know, multi-million-dollar, until you're a CEO of some rich company that you can do and give away all this money. Don't wait till you're 50, 40, 30, whatever it is that you're doing until you start doing just as you are, where you are, serve God. And see what God does with the amount that we give to Him. I'll give you a personal example for me. I remember in college we had at our church, there was, we have these things called missions weekends. And this one couple had come for that weekend and they were sharing a story about how they're raising money, support for where they're going, okay, to this mission field. And they're talking to the church and they say, we need to raise this much money in order for us to have enough money to survive, for the next couple of years or whatever. And this is early on, my freshman year. And I remember all I had in my pocket, okay, because I wasn't working, I didn't have a whole lot of money. The only money that I had in my pocket was about $15 or something like that. And in my bank account, okay, in my poor little bank account, the amount of money that I had was about $64 and some cents. That was the money that I had, okay, until my next paycheck which was in 2 weeks. Okay, so I didn't really have a whole lot of money. So I have this $15, and the $15 that I had, later on I was going to go on and have dinner with my friends. So I'm holding on to these $15. And here I am listening to this couple, and they're saying, please won't you give and participate in the work of God. In my mind I'm thinking, what's 15 bucks? What's $15 going to do? Okay? I didn't really give it to them, so I'm holding onto it for the entire service. I have it in my hands. And the person that was collecting the offering, they had already come and gone. Okay? They had come and gone, and the service ended, and I still have my money in my pocket. And it feels like my money in my pocket is starting to come alive because it's like, pff, 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 and I can feel it kind of breathing in my pocket. Okay, so at the end of the service, I find the person that's collecting the money. They had already counted everything because the missionary couple, they're leaving right away, and so they had given all the offering together and they had already given to the person. I said, is it too late for me to give something? He said, no, just find them and give it to them. I ran over, I gave it to the person, and you know what they say? We were $15 short in meeting our goal. I guarantee you there were people in that congregation that gave thousands of dollars. But but I felt like the most important person that day. Because wherever they go, they're going to tell a story about this one guy that gave $15 and for them to make exactly how much they came to serve God. And that's what Jesus is saying. He's like, don't wait. Don't wait till you have your degree. Don't wait till you have your millions of dollars so that you can finally start doing the work of God. He says, look, I use you just as you are with what you have and watch me do the miracles. How amazing must have been for the disciples to start giving that fish and the fish not disappearing. The endless amounts of bread that they're giving and the bread doesn't disappear. And Jesus says to us, if you want to experience it, then you need to go and give and believe that I will use what you have. See, that's the problem with us. We're always waiting. We're saying, Jesus, I'll do it. Just let me have enough, and then I'll give it to you. Let me have enough saved up, or let me get there, and then I'll do it, I promise. Jesus says, look, trust me now. See what happens. And here's the second one. And here's, I think, probably the most important thing that we need to understand about serving God and doing the work that God's called us to do. In John 6:25-35, remember I told you that this story of this account of this miracle happens in all four Gospels, and this is John's account of it. And 25, it actually picks up where Mark leaves off, okay? So in Mark, the story happens in verse 44, they're talking about how many people they fed, and then in 45 till the end of chapter 6, it tells a story about the disciples on the boat, and then Jesus comes to walk on the water to meet with them, and then it doesn't say anything else after the disciples land, and then it goes right into chapter 7, which is talking more about Jesus' ministry, okay? But in John 6:25-35, we see a conversation that happens after Jesus lands on the other side, okay? And then the people who have been fed by Jesus the previous day catch up with them, okay? And now look, verse 25, the people that had been fed the other day, when they found him on the other side of the lake, they asked him, Jesus, Rabbi, when did you get here? Jesus answers this group of people that have run, again, on foot all the way to the other side to meet Jesus, and he says to them, very truly I tell you, you are looking for me not because you saw the signs I performed, but because you ate the loaves and had your fill. You see, the people had probably been walking all night after Jesus and his disciples got on the boat, after the miracle was done. They were going to the other side of the lake, okay? These people had been walking all night after they'd been fed to meet Jesus on the other side of the lake, okay? And when they get there, Jesus says to them, hey, you guys missed the point. You're not here because you saw the signs that I performed, but you're here because your stomachs were full. This word signs is talking about the marker, the pointing, the person that my miracles are supposed to point to. And what Jesus is saying is, look, you missed me. Because what the bread and the fish and the breaking of the bread and passing it up, all of that was supposed to, the miracle that I did for you that day was to signify me, my love. The miraculous sign of God's love for his people, and you missed the point because why? You were more focused